On this Tuesday night, the warning from doctors: don't let your guard down. Climbing COVID cases, the subvariant spawning anxiety about reinfections.
It's hit our family twice.
And the rapid test just developed in Canada. New evidence of Trump's outrageous plot to stay in power.
The meeting has been called the craziest meeting of the Trump presidency.
What White House staff rushed to stop. Feeling the heat, the UK prepares for a potential emergency. And breathtaking images beamed from space.
It's just outstanding.
The universe captured by the most powerful telescope ever created.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Tracy Tong.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. After 2.5 long years, we recognize Canadians are fed up. And while no one wants to hear this, cases of COVID-19 are again climbing and causing strain on the healthcare system. Tonight, Ontario is considering expanding booster shots to all adults. And BC has already announced it will roll out a second booster program to people aged 12 and over this fall. The chief of the World Health Organization says COVID-19 surveillance has reduced significantly, and limited testing and genome sequencing is clouding the true impact of new variants.
Subvariants of Omicron like BA4 and BA5 continue to drive waves of cases, hospitalization, and death around the world.
Cases reported to the WHO have risen by 30% in the last 2 weeks. In BC, hospitalizations have increased 35% in a week. And in recent days, 7 hospitals in Ontario have either closed or made plans to temporarily close emergency rooms due to critical staffing shortages and outbreaks. And if there's one takeaway, as Shallima Maharaj reports, while we may be done with the pandemic, it is not done with us.
What I had thought at the time was that COVID, once you have it, you're immune, you shouldn't be getting it again. And that soon after, I was really shocked.
A bakery owner and singer, Christine Enns, knows well the lingering symptoms of COVID-19. She's had it twice, first in February, then in April. And yes, she is fully vaccinated, even had her booster.
My son just has recently contacted it for the second time as well, just in the last month. So that was another surprise too, because he's 20 and he's a very healthy and active kid. And so, yeah, it's hit our family twice.
With the emergence of Omicron subvariants, particularly BA5, fueling the latest wave, there is concern about reinfections.
Many of us thought that if you had an earlier infection or a vaccine, then you would be protected against Omicron. It appears that is not as successful as we had hoped.
Researchers at the University of Toronto have created a rapid test capable of gauging just how effective neutralizing antibodies are against the virus.
Think of the virus as a goalie, and then our body is trying to take shots on the goalie. And so if we measure general antibodies, that's telling you more or less shots on goal. Neutralizing antibodies are measuring shots that actually score a goal.
As for Christine Enns,
I'm just starting to get my taste and smell back.
She still plans on getting her 4th dose when she can.
I think that's still important, even more so now, I think. I know some people have said, wow, why bother with the boosters if everybody's going to get it anyways? But it's not like the chicken pox where you just get it and you're done.
Shallima Maharaj, Global News.
Canada's premiers met for a second day of talks in Victoria, BC, again calling on Ottawa to boost its share of healthcare funding from 22% to 35% to rebuild the ailing system. Federal Health Minister Jean-Yves says Ottawa wants accountability on any new cash given. But as Richard Zussman reports, BC Premier John Horgan says the feds are fueling a problem that doesn't exist.
Cough, cop-out.
I think it's a cop-out, and it's a mechanism to divert attention for the federal government to say, well, we don't want to continue to fund healthcare because you might do something else with the money.
After 2 days of meetings in Victoria, the premier's lashing out against the federal government. Frustration the Prime Minister nor any of his ministers bothered to show up here to hash out a healthcare deal.
We want to sit down and reimagine Canadian healthcare in 2022. Let's get on with that. That's the message to Ottawa.
The sticking point, as it always is money. The provinces insist Ottawa provides just 22% of healthcare funding and is asking for that to go up to 35%, an estimated increase of $28 billion per year. But Ottawa says these numbers don't factor in specific transfers and the one-time influx of COVID cash. And no deal would come without conditions on how the money is spent.
What we're talking about now is not asking the federal government to monitor our budgeting processes. We're not saying we don't want to be accountable for the expenditures we make. We're saying to Ottawa, the system isn't working.
Stuck in the middle, millions of Canadians looking for a family doctor, waiting in an emergency room, or generally let down by a struggling healthcare system.
There are stats that suggest that because of the primary care crisis BC is facing, there are up to 4 deaths a day that are linked to primary care deficits.
The Canadian Medical Association says they appreciate the premiers pushing for more money, but contend all politicians need to push past the fighting.
We've been sounding the alarm about the healthcare system for a long time. It's just right now it's at a level of crisis, I think, that we haven't seen, where there's real true risks to people's health by not being able to access care.
One suggestion for an immediate fix would be a plan in terms of the human resources needed to make the healthcare system run smoother in each province. But until then, as fighting continues, it means Canadians wait a little bit longer for the healthcare they so desperately need. Richard Zussman, Global News, Victoria.
In the United States, the January 6th committee continued its public hearings today with a focus on the role Donald Trump played in assembling the mob that attacked the U.S. Capitol. U.S. lawmakers say the former president refused to accept election results and accused him of setting the stage for violence, then not acting to stop it once the chaos ensued. Jackson Prosco reports.
In devastating detail, the January 6th committee laid out Donald Trump's refusal to accept his clear election loss.
President Trump is a 76-year-old man. He is not an impressionable child.
The committee heard how Trump ignored the evidence, instead turning to an unlikely team of outside advisors who pushed outlandish schemes to stay in power, like this draft executive order.
This proposed order directs the Secretary of Defense to seize voting machines, quote, effective immediately.
Former White House counsel Pat Cipollone testified he tried in vain to steer Trump and his advisors away from the conspiracy theories.
To have the federal government seize voting machines, that's a terrible idea. That's not how we do things in the United States.
Yet on a mid-December night, those pushing the schemes met with Trump in the Oval Office. When White House staff found out, they rushed to intervene.
At times, there were people shouting at each other, hurling insults at each other.
What they were proposing, I thought was nuts.
I'm going to categorically describe it as, you guys are not tough enough.
It was after that meeting ended that Trump sent his infamous tweet, summoning followers to Washington.
This could be Trump's last stand.
The time for games is over. The time for action is now.
In the days leading up to the 6th, messages show Trump was quietly planning to march to the Capitol himself and spoke with his former advisor Steve Bannon on the morning of January 5th. Soon after, Bannon said this on his podcast.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
Court filings suggest that ahead of the 6th, extremist groups like the Oath Keepers were making their own plans, shipping weapons and explosives to the Washington area.
This could have been the spark that started a new civil war.
Perhaps the most powerful testimony came from those who stormed the Capitol. They were clear-eyed that their actions came at the direction of the man who refused to concede the election.
So why'd you decide to march to the Capitol?
Well, basically, the president, got everybody riled up, told everybody to head on down. So we basically were just following what he said.
Perhaps one of the most startling pieces of evidence presented today were text messages from Trump's own campaign manager to another Trump associate in the aftermath of the 6th. The campaign manager said, quote, "A sitting president asking for civil war. I feel guilty for helping him win." Tracy?
And Jackson, with more hearings expected next week, have we learned anything else about potential witness tampering in the meantime?
This is something the committee has brought up before and brought up again today, and they say a potential witness who has not yet testified was recently contacted by former President Trump. That person declined the phone call, notified their lawyer notified the committee, and now the Department of Justice is involved.
All right, our Jackson Prosco in Washington for us. Thank you, Jackson. Back here in Canada, news from Rogers tonight. The company says it is giving customers affected by its massive network outage a credit equal to 5 days of service, as opposed to the 2 days previously offered. The news comes as the federal government is promising big changes, with the industry minister demanding the big telecoms put aside competition and work together when emergencies happen. But as Abigail Beeman reports, how that would actually work is another question.
The investigation by the CRTC will bring to light what really happened.
The industry minister was so confident the CRTC would investigate the Rogers outage, François-Philippe Champagne used the word inquiry 10 times Monday. The outage was Friday. It took the CRTC until Tuesday to send Rogers a letter seeking information, saying while the commission considers the complaints and calls for a public inquiry before it, Rogers is to provide by the 22nd of July comprehensive answers. But making no commitment to an inquiry or investigation, many frustrated customers are clamoring for.
I said to them in no uncertain terms, this was unacceptable, full stop.
Champagne says that was his message to Rogers in that nearly hour-long virtual meeting where he demanded telecoms come up with a plan in 60 days to help each other through outages, providing emergency roaming and better communication.
This is the first time that the federal government has actually drawn a line in the sand, decided to tell the telecom industry it's time to change the way that you do business, stop focusing exclusively on profits.
In statements of their own, Rogers and TELUS say they're ready to follow the minister's lead, while Bell's focuses on investing and delivering for its customers with no mention of the minister or working together.
There's a whole host of potential technical and even legal challenges, as well as compensation, because think of it this way. You're giving access to your networks, if you're Bell or TELUS, to Rogers, who's a fierce competitor of yours.
There are also questions about exactly how this help could work. The minister has said Bell and TELUS were happy to help, but there wasn't anything they could do.
The internet sets an important precedent for us. It was designed to function in the event of a nuclear war when chunks of it might have been destroyed and traffic would still automatically find its way to where it needed to go.
It may not be easy or quick, but some tech experts say the minister's call is certainly technically possible. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
A somber scene in the streets of Tokyo. Coming up, the mourners who bid a final farewell to former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Japanese mourners paid their last respects to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at a funeral in Tokyo today, days after he was shot while speaking at a campaign event. Crowds of people lined the streets as the hearse carrying Abe's remains drove through Japan's capital. It paused at places of significance to Abe, including his former office and the parliament building where he worked as a lawmaker since 1993. A private funeral for the 67-year-old was held earlier in the day. Ukraine's president slamming Canada's decision to send an important piece of repaired pipeline equipment back to Europe.
Це стосується не просто якоїсь турбіни для газопроводу «Північний потік», яку Канада не повинна була, але все ж таки вирішила передати.
In his nightly video address Monday, Volodymyr Zelensky says the decision on the Nord Stream pipeline turbine will be seen as a manifestation of weakness by Russia. On Saturday, the Canadian government said the turbine, which is key to the operation of the pipeline that supplies Europe with natural gas from Russia, could be returned to Germany after undergoing repairs in Montreal. That decision caused Kyiv to summon a senior Canadian diplomat to express anger with the move. Zelensky warned after the pipeline is restarted, Russia will have the power to cut off the flow of its natural gas to Europe at any time. As Russian forces make progress in the eastern part of Ukraine, attacks on civilians are intensifying. Video from Ukraine's State Emergency Service shows firefighters trying to put out a burning apartment building in Mykolaiv. In the town of Chasiv Yar, 38 bodies have now been recovered from the rubble of a 5-story apartment building that was hit by Russian missiles Saturday. Russia has continually denied its forces are targeting civilians. The Eurozone currency bloc is expanding. Europe's finance ministers have signed off on an agreement for Croatia to adopt the currency as of January 1st. Croatia, which became a member of the European Union in 2013, will become the 20th country to use the euro and the first new addition to the bloc since Lithuania in 2015. Caught on camera. Next, heart-stopping moments for some hikers. Well, that is not a sight any hiker wants to see. Take a look at that wave of snow and ice making its way down the mountain above. But that is exactly what this surreal video captured as hikers made their way through the mountains of Kyrgyzstan last week. Not long after, the massive avalanche engulfed at least one person in a scene that looks straight out of Hollywood.
Oh, God. Oh, dear God.
Now, incredibly, all 10 members of the group survived, with only a few suffering minor injuries. The hiker who posted the video said they had nowhere to run as there was a cliff behind them. And as alpine glaciers are melting rapidly, extreme heat continues to hit regions in Western Europe and the UK. In Britain, an extreme heat warning is in effect, but the country's top officials are on the verge of declaring its first national heat wave emergency as the temperature soars and people are at risk of illness or death. Redmond Shannon reports from London.
Scorched earth outside the British House of Commons, appropriate given recent events in UK politics. The truth? It's the result of a run of unusually hot and dry days in London town. Even in normally temperate Scotland, these Madagascan rascals can hardly cool down. Since records began in 1884, the UK's 10 hottest years have all happened in the past 2 decades. The average global temperature has risen 1.1 degrees too. People here admit it's no anomaly.
I've been to London quite a few times, but it's the most hot season I've ever experienced.
You can't deny that the temperatures are increasing.
Like, people our age are quite concerned about the rising temperatures.
And now the National Weather Service here in the UK has issued an extreme heat warning starting Sunday. It says the all-time temperature record of 38.7 degrees could be broken, with above 40 even possible. One local authority has its winter gritters on standby, loaded not with salt but sand to cool older asphalt roads never designed for heat like this.
They're the ones that would be more susceptible to this. And actually, you can get like a delamination of the road as well.
On the roads of Spain, it's even hotter. Outdoor workers sweltering in the 40s. In Lisbon, it's a bit too much for some tourists.
We're trying to avoid the hottest times of the day because of the little one. So we're come out early today.
Climate scientists worry that scorching summer days like these could soon become all too common. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
A galaxy far, far away. Next, space, the final frontier, in focus. Well, following a sneak peek from the White House, NASA revealed 4 more highly anticipated images from the $10 billion James Webb telescope today. The stunning beauty shots reveal details never seen before and give astronomers the deepest and sharpest view of the universe they've ever had to work with. Mike Armstrong was at the Canadian Space Agency this morning for the long-awaited unveiling.
And liftoff. The launch of the Webb telescope on Christmas Day was where the waiting started. It still had to make a 1.5 million kilometer trip out into space, open, align, calibrate, and then finally start sending back images.
They are just stunning.
Astrophysicist Sarah Gallagher works with the Canadian Space Agency and last week had a sneak peek.
Yes, so I know I had to bite my tongue. All I could say is they're going to be great.
Okay, Amber, so here it is.
The official unveiling, after all the waiting, was made by NASA.
Here we go.
With a watch party outside Montreal at the Canadian Space Agency.
Wow, look at that.
Today, for the first time, we're seeing brand new stars that were previously completely hidden from our view. Honestly, it took me a while to even figure out what to call out in this image. There's just so much going on here. It's so beautiful.
This is an image of Stephan's quintet, 5 galaxies, each containing millions to hundreds of billions of stars. This image is a planetary nebula, a dying star, something we've never seen like this. But as impressive as each image is, it's the data behind them that excites scientists. Webb isn't just showing what's out there. It scans space in infrared wavelengths, giving information about the distance of what we're seeing and its composition. This image shows the water found in a scan of a distant planet, WASP 96b.
Those sorts of data are just exquisite.
Now, Canada had 2 major contributions to the Webb telescope: the fine guidance sensor that allows it to point and stay pointed at objects, and the near-infrared imager and slitless spectrograph that helps analyze light.
It's so thrilling to actually have an instrument that we worked on that actually contributes to science, that spectrum of water from a planet. Wow.
There was some good news early in the telescope's mission. It took less fuel to reach its destination than expected, and instead of operating for a decade, it may now last 10 to 15 years longer. There are likely future astrophysicists who will work with the Webb telescope, who aren't even born yet. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Saint-Hubert, Quebec.
Pretty incredible. Well, that is Global National for this Tuesday night. I'm Tracy Tong. Tonight's Your Canada is this colorful neighborhood, better known as Jelly Bean Row in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks so much for being with us. Neetu Garcha will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Good night.